kids come into the room, and it was awesome.
Oh yeah, Doc is the man.
Yeah. Cool, awesome. Well, let's get into it. I'm here with Jack Runkel, star at the University of Loyola. Jack, how are you?
Doing well. Surviving
Awesome.
quarantine life right now.
I know. Well, we were talking a little bit before I hit record about just watching lacrosse, and I was joking. There's worse ways to spend a day, you know?
Yeah, no doubt. Watching all these high school games and things like that, could be way worse.
Yep. Well, I'm glad to hear. I hope everyone's safe, and kind of glad to hear things are opening up a little bit. But I would love to hear the story of when you first jumped into goal. Do you remember that?
So I don't remember the exact time I did, but I know the story that I've always told kind of revolves around the team that I played on, that I started playing goalie on. So it was this little house league where just a bunch of other kids from my hometown in Fairfield, Connecticut. We all played at this local boys and girls club called Wakeman Boys and Girls Club, and all the dads basically coached different teams, and my dad was one of the coaches amongst like 3 other kids that I went to school with, and I think we had maybe 12 or 13 kids in the team, and nobody played goalie. So it was your job once a week, and I think we had like 14 or 15 games amongst I think we played each team twice, and somebody had to play goalie every week. I think we had more games than we did players on the team. So my dad basically volunteered me once all the guys were done. All right, Jack, I'll just step in and play goalie for the rest of the time now. So all you guys don't have to worry about it. Jack will just do it. Thanks, Dad. I guess I don't really have a choice. But yeah, it kind of started that way. But, sorry.
Oh, no worries. Cool. And then, was it something that like you enjoyed? Was it something that you had success with out of the gate, or was it kind of like, oh man, I gotta suit up at goalie again?
I stunk at it right away. At it. In those games, I think it was like 3 games at the end of the year that I had to play for the rest of the season. And I think it was maybe the second game, I just kept getting scored on. I didn't want to get hit with the ball. I kept moving out of the way, and I was a hockey player too. So it was also in the day too when coaches could like stand on the field with you. So my dad would stand on the defensive end. Another guy would stand in the middle of the field and coach like the midfielders and the offense. And then the one guy would coach the attack. So like it was really hands-on lacrosse. We were playing full games. But I kept getting scored on. I think I had tears probably running down my face. And my dad walked over and he was like, you can hit the guy. Who's like the one kid who knows how to dodge through everybody and roll around everyone. And me being a hockey player, I kind of spark like lit up in my brain. And this next time this one kid who knew how to cradle could run through all of our defensemen, he came out of a roll and I cleaned him out. And he like lost his stick, lost his gloves, lost everything. And I was hooked. I kept playing goalie from then on out. And it's funny, I was really not good at the time, but I loved that I could hit and be kind of like a hockey player in that sense. So.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Was there like one camp or like one season or maybe one coach that you worked with where it was kind of like a big aha moment where you had like a huge progression, or was it just kind of like a gradual type of thing for you in your goalie career?
So I really never had a goalie coach. And there's a couple little moments that I remember in my history that kind of like really strengthened the idea that I should be playing goalie. To the coaching point, I again, like I said, I didn't really have a guy that I went to. My dad and I basically just did hand-eye coordination stuff.
Oh, wow.
My dad played a lot of street hockey growing up, and he kind of understood what it meant to be a goalie and all that. But there wasn't really much in terms of, goalie coaching. I worked with a little bit with Andy Whitley, who's now the head coach at Bellarmine. He at the time was the goalie coach at Fairfield U and a member, like a coach of a club organization that I played for. So that was really the only time I ever got coached by anybody. But I do remember when I was playing, I think it was in 5th grade. I started playing goalie in 4th. And I think in 5th grade, I actually started to kind of improve. Let me know if you want me to stop too.
No, you're good. We can keep going.
I started to really improve and like enjoy playing. I think the one thing that really stuck out to me though, I was playing in this all-star game, and um, Matt Russell being the former Navy goalie at the time, probably
Right.
2005. I honestly can't remember the year, but Matt Russell is from Madison, Connecticut, town kind of down the road from Fairfield a ways, but his dad was coaching the all-star team that I was playing on. And I don't know why he was coaching it. I don't remember, but I remember it being my dad telling me, "Hey, that's Matt Russell's dad, the goalie who plays for Navy." It was unbelievable. He came up to me after the day and just gave me like the biggest compliment. He's like, "Hey, keep doing what you're doing. You're great. Loved watching you play." And that really kind of stuck with me. That was the first time I really kind of felt validated. Like, all right, I'm kind of good at this. Let's keep going and see what happens.
Yeah, love it. It's interesting how, like, he probably doesn't remember that comment, right? But it's interesting how, like, how that can like really change the career for a young goalie. It's just something to keep in mind for like all of the coaches and even all of like the the quote unquote college players, the stars who like you say an offhand comment like that to a kid, and it can like totally change his trajectory of his career and goal.
I remember where I was standing, the color jersey I was wearing. Like, I remember every little detail about that. Like, I remember the kind of gloves that I was wearing and all that. Like, I remember exactly where I was standing. And Mr. Russell comes up to me and says, "Hey, you did a great job. You should really keep at this. You're pretty good at it." It just sticks with you. It's kind of funny that it happens that way. But,
Yeah, love it. So you when you were back in your playing day, you're coaching now. Do you play anymore these days, or?
Unfortunately, no. The biggest the extent of my playing really kind of revolves around whether or not guys on my team want to get shots on one of our goalies who isn't ready to or isn't available.
Got it. Yep.
I've said in the last, watching the PLL and watching the MLL games the last 4 weeks, 5 weeks, I kind of kick myself that I haven't really kept up the way that I like the training and things like that, and not gotten shot on a more consistent basis. Because I actually truly feel like I wouldn't be able to protect myself right now from somebody like, I played with the Bayhawks, and Drew Westervelt was, he was the guy on the team at the time, and he shoots it over 100 miles an hour just with a flick of a wrist. I don't think I'd be able to protect myself right now. So unfortunately, I haven't really gotten a chance to suit him up again in a while, but I really kind of have been focusing a whole lot more on developing as a coach and really trying to put a lot of my eggs in that basket. But I do get the itch. Like I said, watching the MLL and the PLL, I get the itch watching those guys play and watching guys that I played against still playing too and things like that. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I know what you mean. I hung up my cleats a long time ago, but every time I'm out there, like, and even watching games, watching clips or watching the PLL guys, I get the itch. But when you were back in your prime, let's say, well, you're not far removed from your prime. So when you're in your college days, like, everyone's kind of got a little bit of a different, style in terms of how they play, stance and arc, and kind of how you set up. And how would you describe your style of play?
I'd probably say, I screwed around with a lot of different styles, and that's kind of a little bit that's a deeper conversation that I can have later on. But my style, I would probably say, is pretty simple, and it's changed over time too. I went everywhere from in high school playing really wide and sitting really deep, with a really long, really big width between my hands on my stick, all the way till my senior year in college, where I was playing a pretty flat arc. I was playing probably inside of the width of my shoulders with my feet, and standing more straight up than anything else. So my style has really changed and developed, and I think that's kind of it's the life cycle, I think, of a goalie's experience in his skill level, right? Like, a lot of guys do what they do in the position because they think it's what gets them the most saves. And I think the more you develop, if your stance isn't changing, isn't evolving, then you're not giving yourself the best possible opportunity to make the most saves. I think if you stay rigid and you stay the same way, you're not going to succeed, I think, a whole lot at the next level.
That is interesting. So for you, was it about like just experimenting and kind of seeing what worked, or was there like the specific coaching points that people gave you and then you're, all right, I'll try that? Or
I really didn't get any coaching until I got to Loyola with Charlie Toomey. So a lot of it was experimentation. I mean, I emulated guys that I could watch, guys that I could find, and it was kind of pre-internet era too, right? Like internet really wasn't a thing for me until high school. So watching like YouTube videos and things like that and trying to consume goalie stuff really wasn't a thing. So if I could go watch a game where Notre Dame is playing at Fairfield and see Scott Rogers play, that was my experience, getting to watch the Final Four on TV. Or I think my first Final Four that I ever went to, I got to see I forget what year UMass was in the Final Four. Was it 2007? They played against Maryland and then played Virginia in the final. Just watching Harry Alford and Doc Schneider, who I got a chance to coach against this year for the first time, and all those guys. Like, everybody does something just a little bit differently, and I think that was the way that I processed the game, was trying to get inside their head and emulate their style, so that I could see what worked in certain circumstances and what didn't. I'm a little bit of an introvert like that when it comes to the position and thinking about the game a whole lot, like trying out different things. Like I coached at Yale for a brief period of time. I was the volunteer coach, and whenever we'd play Albany, I'd try to emulate Blaze Reardon when he was there. And I couldn't. His stance and his style and his ability to make saves with his butt end and the ankles of his feet, like it's really, really hard to match. It's one of those things. Like you try to pick out different guys and different strengths and things like that, and some stuff works, some stuff doesn't. Like again, another example, I played against Dylan Ward, national goalie for Canada. In my opinion, probably the best goalie in the world. Still, I'd argue that. And he was the best goalie that I ever played against in college when he was at Bellarmine. And he played a three-step arc with his hand. He played with an attack shaft on his goalie stick, and he played with his top hand all the way at the plastic and his bottom hand almost off the end of his shaft. He just made saves almost like a box goalie. He's one of the best goalies in the NLL too right now. So that's, I think, one of the reasons why he's just so good at seeing the ball come out of people's sticks. It's awesome. One of those things you can't emulate that style, but you can admire it and try it and see what kind of works.
Yeah. Well, I feel you about not having access to like YouTube videos and because I mean, I graduated college in 2003 and, that was before YouTube, and we were lucky to get, like we get the championship games on TV and watch those like 25 times. But anyway, kids today, I tell you, they got it easy.
I know.
It's interesting.
I used to watch the Tillman Johnson game, the mud game at M&T Bank Stadium all the time.
Yeah.
That was my first real experience in goalie, watching him. I didn't want to play goalie at the time. I wanted to be an attackman, but I remember watching him, just thinking he was awesome.
Yeah. Well, he inspired so many goalies. I made a save montage of that game. I watch it every once in a while to get myself pumped up. So.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting you describe yourself a little bit as an introvert, because when I watch, tapes of yours that I've seen, one of the skills that I would say you're the best at is communication. Really good at communication. Like I watched this clip. It wasn't even about you. It was like a Joe Fletcher versus, matchup. And here I am just listening to your communication, just so loud, like so clear. At one point, like just so inspirational in terms of like, let's go Green, like talk it up Green. Like where did that come from? Where did that part of your game come from?
That came from my dad basically saying on the sidelines that he couldn't hear me when I was playing in club games and things like that. I think again, not having much coaching, you kind of rely on things that make sense. And to me, my dad just always used to say, like, if I can't hear you, nobody else really understands what's going on. So why don't you just talk a little bit louder so that your defense can kind of understand the situation? And it started with just calling out where the ball was, because that's what you're taught at a young age: top left, top right, top center, things like that.
Right.
But I think with continued practice and continued just emphasis on it, and my dad just telling me, "Hey, I can't hear you." Yeah, I can hear his voice. I can't hear you. Just from the sidelines. And he never criticized me in my play. Like, he was never like really strict about my game or anything like that. Like, he was always extremely supportive. I can only ever remember him telling me, you got to be louder, because that was the one thing that I could control, was my volume. So I think when I say that I'm a little bit of an introvert when it comes to the goalie position, I'm definitely, like, I think about the position a lot, and I keep my thoughts to myself a lot. But when it comes to communicating, just being able to decipher what's going on and being able to communicate it fluently with volume is extremely difficult. And I'm not saying that I'm not trying to toot my own horn here or anything like that, but like, trying to teach a younger goalie to communicate in that way, I've found is very, very difficult. And I guess it's something that is in your brain, your ability to process information, relay what you need to have happen, and then do that while also screaming at the top of your lungs is, I think, a pretty difficult concept for a lot of guys to pick up. And I've found it's really either you have it or you don't. And it's not something that I look for, but it is something that I definitely notice. You should be able to close your eyes and hear the game, not really have to see it. I think of guys like Adam Gittleman, who play right now, Kyle Bernlohr, John Galloway, guys like, if I have the TV on, I think Galloway was mic'd up for one of the PLL games, or I think maybe Bernhardt actually was mic'd up and Galloway was close by and you could hear what Galloway was saying. But you should be able to close your eyes and see what he is saying. And that was kind of always my goal. Like, you should be able to be looking the opposite direction on my defense. Like, be a short stick D midi who's standing at the top of the box, guarding somebody who's outside the box while the ball's behind the cage. And you'll know exactly what's happening just by listening to me. Because if you have to turn and look, you're giving yourself up an advantage. Your guy can cut off of the back of your head and create an offensive opportunity. So it really stemmed out of trying to give my teammates the best chance to win, while also just trying to be vocal. And I think a lot of people say it's something like that people would view as intimidating, and like offensive players think of as intimidating, and I don't really see it that way. If that's the case, great. I think that's an added benefit. It was way more for me about helping my teammates get the most out of each defensive possession. Because if they're walking off the field confused about what happened or what went wrong, then I could have probably communicated a little bit better, because I'm just standing there. I think that's the biggest cliche, like, for goalies. It's like, well, you guys don't work hard. Well, I mean, I can apply my brain a little bit more than anybody else can, so why don't I make your job a little bit easier while I'm not huffing and puffing? You know what I mean?
Yeah. One of the things that I love about your communication too is, I mean, we talked to, like, at the very beginning of this, how you mentioned back in the day, like, coaches used to be able to be on the field. And in many ways, like, that's kind of what I see, like, when I watch your tape, is like, you are that coach on the field, and you're reminding people to get a poke. You're reminding people to stay low in their defense. You're like, watch the turn back. You're like anticipating the play that the offensive player is going to make. And like you said, just helping out, doing anything you can to communicate to your defense and helping them out. And so I think that's like a really important point is like, yeah, the communication starts with top right, the ball location, but then it evolves like as you get more knowledge about the game. And that's
Mm-hmm.
tough. I mean, that's tough because you got to increase your lacrosse IQ. You got to understand how to play defense just like a defender. But it's very important. And when you can get to that level, that's like elite communication, I think.
Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of putting yourself in other people's shoes too. Like, and I think maybe there's a little bit of an inherent growth in my own mind when I was trying to figure out how guys like Adam Gittleman would play, like trying to put myself in their shoes. Same thing applies, I think, in the same mental side of things applies to trying to help Joe Fletcher get a poke on Jordan Wolf when he's rolling back at the island trying to score lefty on me, like things like that. Like you try to put yourself into his shoes and help him hopefully make the right decision and make the right play athletically, where I'm really just saying words, not really doing any of the hard stuff.
Yeah. That's right. Just telling them what to do. You go out there and do it. You go out there and do it, right? You go out there and stop Jordan Wolf.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. So when you got to Loyola, that was kind of the first, I guess, your first real taste of goalie coaching. Was there, what were some big ahas, big things that you learned? How did your goalie career change from that point forward?
I got a lot more attention, which was kind of surprising. That was the biggest kind of shock to my system, was consistent goalie coaching in the fall, at least my freshman year when we're doing individuals consistently on a every other day basis, because we did goalie training on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then we did conditioning on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I was getting live reps with somebody critiquing and helping kind of push me in different directions and try different things that frequently, which was strange. In terms of like an aha moment, I don't know if there was one specifically. I think the biggest thing that I can really say that clicked from Coach Toomey was some of the stuff that we did to adjust my game, but from a way, like not like saying hold my hands higher or different like kind of technique things. It was more like mentally adjusting what I was doing. Like seeing how it was a lot of like trial and error. So I played a pretty medium arc for most of my career at high school and kind of into the beginning of college, but being able to adjust and then try to make a save when you're standing a foot higher than you normally would, or vice versa, standing and trying to make a save where your heels are the heels of your cleats are on the goal line. It's a very different experience, both from a hand-eye perspective and from a timing perspective. So like a little tool like that, being able to feel a difference and see the difference, I think, in what was happening around me really helped me take the next step in terms of being able to kind of control my outcomes. I think if that makes any type of sense. And that really kind of molded the way that I played sophomore, junior, senior year of my career at Loyola, is being able to change and adjust and start to use some of those adjustments as like a tool. So perfect example, we played Duke all the time, and Miles Jones, we put a short stick on him just out of matchups. It's just one of we matched up better with the short stick on him, and some to hear that, I think from a lot of people would be kind of surprising, but we felt like that if we could send him to his left down the alley, it would give me a better opportunity to step out, take away a lot more angle, and potentially just soak a shot in my chest pad or make him miss. And that was one of those strategic things where if I just made a small little adjustment by stepping out 6 inches off of my arc and cutting down some angle, we could potentially survive a possession, have a higher chance of surviving a possession if we kind of let that situation happen. So the aha moment came with those sorts of things, the little adjustments, the mental kind of tweaks to thinking about like strategy and thinking about how making a save in a certain way would affect playing defense, getting the ball to their offensive end.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I mean, it's like you're in full control, and you have all these different options available in your arsenal, whether that's arc play or like maybe my stance and but just learning like as you're growing up, like how those different changes affect your play is very empowering because like, cool, I've got like this tool in my tool belt. I think that's kind of what you're getting
Absolutely.
at. Yeah,
Absolutely.
cool. Awesome. What about like specific goalie drills that you did back in the day, or maybe that you do now with guys you're coaching? What were some of your favorites there?
It's kind of funny. And I don't know if you're probably familiar with the Goalie Smith guys, the Gavosny
Oh, for sure.
brothers.
Yeah, we've had them on the podcast twice. They're great guys.
They're the best. The stuff that they do, like the hand-eye coordination, the two-ball toss, and the creativity that they have with a lot of that stuff. That's stuff that I did with my dad, like when I was in 4th, 5th grade, just to like build up hand-eye coordination. So like when I saw that they were doing that stuff, it really clicked with me, and I love their stuff, and I love the way that they think about the game. But I do a lot of that stuff, and I did it kind of before that. I knew that was what the Goalie Smith guys did, and it's kind of funny. Like you guys who think the position the same way will probably do the same sorts of drills. So I do a lot of their hand-eye coordination stuff, and I do a lot of that stuff with my guys at LIU now. They do a lot of it on their own time. I don't spend a ton of my time in practice watching them do hand-eye coordination stuff because I just don't have time for it. But They will do that stuff. I teach that right in the beginning, and I consistently hammer home that as a way for guys to hone their craft on a daily basis on their own time. We spend a lot of time talking about extra work and the things that you're doing other than just getting shots, which I value a lot. I think I'm probably on a little bit of a more conservative side when it comes to taking live shots from your teammates without much defense in front of you. If it's just like guys passing the ball and then stepping into 10 yards and shooting as hard as they can, like I'm really of the belief that you're not going to get a whole lot out of that other than maybe kind of at the end of your workout, you want to test yourself and test your hand-eye coordination at the end of the day. Sure. But just hop in and get shots at the beginning of the day. I just don't think that's very productive. So we spend a lot of time they'll spend time on their own doing hand-eye coordination. And then I do a lot of little things that really break the position down into small pieces, like manageable pieces. It's stuff that I did with Coach Toomey and stuff that we kind of did on a daily basis. Things like taking away your feet. I'll have guys basically sit on their knees, and they'll make saves basically at their hip level. So I'll toss a tennis ball down to where it would basically bounce right in front of their kneecaps, and they have to make that save without the stick bouncing off of the turf. And if your stick is bouncing off of the turf, it's a really good indicator of your stick basically swooping down kind of across into that off-stick hit motion rather than going straight to it in a really short and sharp motion. So a lot of that stuff I do very similar things kind of all over the place, and it's all based on trying to build that muscle memory and to build that the positive like brain receptors that let you know that you're doing something right over and over again. So like when you're watching a game or you're playing in a game and you feel yourself maybe just miss something that's off hip, you can bring yourself back to that time when you were doing that drill and you felt that positive reinforcement of making that save without swooping your hands and being slow to get to that off hip save. You can basically activate that piece of your brain to get yourself back into that position where you're really short and really sharp on getting to that spot off hip. So I do a lot of stuff that's kind of that's molded around that whole idea.
That's a very interesting point of bringing yourself back like mentally to that place when you made that great save. Like how do you cement that in a kid's mind? Like, is it just positive like way to go, or is there some other like stronger things we need to know about?
consistency, consistently
Yep.
doing it over and over and over again. I mean, I have a bank of about 15 things that kind of follow that philosophy, that I use to hammer home the monotony of getting something right. And if you can consistently do it and activate that piece of your brain that gives you the positive feeling of like, all right, I made that save, cool. Serotonin or whatever it is. I get
Yeah.
scientific sometimes. I don't even know if I'm saying the right thing, but like that sort of thing, I think that's very tangible, in being able to build confidence and build consistency starts with consistently like being in that place mentally. If you're not there mentally, if you're not feeling that save and that positivity every single time, it's just going to end up being like empty reps, I think is
Yeah.
kind of the thing I'm looking for. Like,
Yeah. Well, there's the other part too, where like, I mean, making a save is naturally a release of, I don't know if it's serotonin or dopamine or what it is. I'm
yeah.
not a scientist either, but it's a great feeling. Let's just agree on that. And so when you make that feeling, whether it be in a game or in a practice, like you get a little hit of that, of that good feeling. And if you're in a practice, if you're not doing it the right way, if you're not making the save the right way, then you're kind of like getting falsely rewarded. You know what I mean? If that makes sense, where like you get that good
Absolutely.
feeling, even though you might have went in an arc, but you just happen with your top hand, but you just happen to make that save.
Absolutely. And I think you see that all the time with, and again, no disrespect to anybody who makes saves like this. I made say everybody in the world makes saves when they flail at a guy who is shooting right on top of them. Like there's no right or wrong way to make a save, and making a save, I'm never, and I tell our guys this all the time, I'm never going to correct you for making a save, but I am going to hammer home little things over and over and over again so that you know and you feel that positive reinforcement every single time we do it when I have that one-on-one time with you. So like if you're making a save and you make a split save and it hits off your shoelace, or you go full Gavazd and you go all the way over the top to make that save against Syracuse in the national championship game. I have that poster actually at home in my childhood bedroom where he makes that save all the way across on somebody on Syracuse who's diving across the front of the crease. It was like one of the best saves I've ever seen. Like that's not necessarily fundamentally sound, but you're doing whatever it takes to make that save. What I think I try to hammer home the most is that making saves is making saves, and you should feel rewarded for it. But the consistency in seeing a guy whose stats at the end of the year are in the top 10, I think that's where you find guys who are doing the right things over and over and over again, or they're doing the things that help them personally be the best that they can be. Like I am not relatable to, insert a small goalie here. Like
Me, Adam Gittleman.
Adam Gittleman. Like
Yeah.
I'm not, I can't relate to him in the way that he plays the game, and the way that he makes saves is incredibly different from the way that I do. But if you can develop consistency in your own game, in the way that you play it, and have that consistent kind of feeling of I'm doing things the right way, you're going to end up being a top 10 goalie, I think.
Yeah.
More often than not.
I think that's kind of the goalie coaching philosophy that I've arrived at as well. Is like, I'm going to teach you the fundamentals of how to make a save, right? And if you can, over time execute those fundamentals, like you're going to be a better goalie. Now, there's going to be certain times where, like you said, you got to flail, you've got to do something that's a little bit unorthodox, and you make the save. And I'm fine with that. Where I have a problem is, like, a lot of times people go down to their butts on like low shots, and they end up on their butt. And it's like, if that's not something we're practicing, and then all of a sudden it starts coming out like during the game, I have a huge problem with that, because like it becomes more of your, like, that's not what we're practicing. And if you have to do it once in a while to like make a save, or I was down there or it just happened, so be it. But let's stick to those fundamentals as much as we can, Because I think you're going to have more success in the long run.
Absolutely. And I think that starts too with your warm up, right? Like if a coach allows a goalie who's getting warmed up to basically go to their butt and make a save that they shouldn't have to, then you're not reinforcing the positive technique or the correct technique. So that's something that I again, that's one of the things that I hammer home with our guys. You're not allowed to go down to your body or to your butt or off of your feet in a warm up. And if you do, it'll be like 10 push-ups or something like that. Like just that way you're constantly reinforcing the way it's supposed to be done. But then in a game, if he's got to get down to his butt to make a split save or something like that, and I'm not gonna say anything to him. Hey, great save, dude. Thanks. So,
love it. Changing gears a little bit. So now you're coaching at the collegiate level, Division I, watching a lot of tape. What are you looking for from young goalies? Like what is it that a young goalie can show you that would prove that he's got what it takes to make it at the D1 level?
I think the one thing that I look for, and when I'm watching young goalies and recruiting goalies, I'm looking for somebody who sees the ball. And the way that I quantify that, or the way that I notice it more often than not, is watching the goalie's head. So like if a guy shoots a ball, for example, and hits him square in the chest, a lot of times what'll happen is if you're not watching the ball and you don't see it hit off of you and watch the rebound, your head won't necessarily snap right to where the ball went. It might go to the other side, or it might pop up thinking the ball popped up on you, or it might go down when the ball did pop up, things like that. If your eyes snap right to where the ball is after it hits you or after it hits the post, or even if it goes in, like that ball, it goes right underneath your stick or kind of off hip and you're watching it the whole way and it hits off the pipe and goes in. If your head is going with the ball the entire way, I know that you have the hand-eye or the eye coordination that it takes to watch that ball come to you. I think a lot of times, and what you'll see in some goalies is there is a flashiness that occurs with a guy who does like to flail or who will explode to a shooter and he doesn't necessarily know where the ball is. That to me is a big red flag. If you don't know where the ball is at all times, then it's going to be really hard to kind of hammer home a lot of those fundamentals because I hate to say it, it's really hard to coach. You can't coach that individual, I think, as well if they can't see the ball as well. So in terms of what I look for a guy who can see the ball, and I try to find that in every guy that I watch. And if you're not seeing the ball, then it's going to be really hard for you to understand a lot of the things that we talk about.
Good point. Very good point. Yeah, sometimes you see that too, like when there's a deflection, like the ball never even gets to the goalie, and like right away, like the goalie's pointing, like where it is because he's picking it up.
You see that in hockey goalie all the time, and I reference a lot of the things that I do with hockey. Hockey goalies often are pointing to where the puck is because the puck got blocked or it got tipped and deflected off of the glass or something like that, and they're always, you see with their stick, they'll point with it, or with their glove hand, they'll point with it, kind of where the puck went. And I think that if you're not seeing the ball, it's really difficult to kind of excel at the position.
Yeah, love it. And then what about like when you meet them? I know like with this coronavirus, it's kind of thrown a wrinkle into all things recruiting, but like say pre-coronavirus, like when they would come on for a visit, like what sort of things are you looking for at that point?
I'm honestly, there's no real right answer, I think, to that. I think I can't really speak to our recruiting process at LIU and things like that, but we're looking for the right fit in terms of the kid being compatible with us as coaches and then compatible with our guys. There's that old goalie cliche that we're all weirdos. And I think that's a little bit of there's a little bit of truth to that for sure. But I don't know. I think that we're mainly looking for somebody who wants to compete, somebody who's going to be pissed off about losing, somebody who's not going to accept anything but the best, things like that. So
Yeah.
competitors.
So interesting. Those are qualities of a great goalie. Those are qualities of a great great employee. And it's so awesome how like you learn and cultivate these skills as a lacrosse goalie, whether it be leadership, communication, hunger, fire, motivation, and then like for most of us, we don't play professional lacrosse, and even if you do end up playing professional lacrosse, like you got to get another job the way that the money is these, hopefully one day, no, but that's the truth of the matter right now. But my point is like the skills you learn on the lacrosse field just translate into life. And so that's why it's such a beautiful position in sport.
No doubt.
Yeah. What about like the mental side of things? How do you think about mental toughness, like when it comes to lacrosse goalies?
With goalie, it's really a struggle for consistency at all times. I think mental toughness, number one, if you're getting scored on and you're getting frustrated with yourself about getting scored on, mental toughness right there has got to be a major focal point for you going forward, because I promise you're going to get scored on again.
Yeah.
And then again, and then some more after that. Like you're going to have games where you don't make a save. I've had plenty of them there. I mean, the best goalies in the world, Kyle Bernlors and the Blaze Reardons, get scored on plenty of times. So in order to start to develop mental toughness, you have to accept the fact that you're going to get scored on, you're going to get hit with the ball, it's going to hurt, and you have to find a way to develop some consistency to overcome that and get back to the same level of play where you started. You should have the same type of fire, energy, and intensity that you started the game with at the end of the game in the last 2 minutes. And in terms of basically trying to cultivate that in a goalie, you really have to hammer home. I call it a goldfish mentality, where you can't think of anything beyond 3 seconds in the past. I don't know where I learned that. I'm sure a lot of people have different names for it, but my dad always used to say that goldfish can't remember anything 3 seconds in the past. So like, if you can develop that mentality, being like a goldfish and not worrying about a shot that just scooted underneath the tip of your the plastic on the head of your stick, or a ball that got deflected that you were right on and it ends up like skipping through your legs rather than going right into your stick, like things like that. Like if you can't forget about those things and forget about the negatives, it's going to be really hard to develop consistency. And I think the consistency in that mental toughness, it kind of go hand in hand, where if you can fight through it mentally, you're going to have a really, really, I think, a lot easier time being consistent in the cage.
Yep. So. Yeah, totally agree with that. Couple good points there that I love. One, I mean, you're going to give up goals. And I think a lot of goalies have this mentality of like every goal that they get scored on them is like, oh, it's like, I can't, like I was expecting a shutout. And that's kind of like how they react. But that, that mindset of like, all right, I'm going to give up goals, but let's not get down after each one. And then, like you said, it's kind of similar. I equate it to like getting scored on in basketball. Like when you get scored on in basketball, like you just run down to the other side and keep going. Like you don't throw your palms up and like, you're not thinking about that play. Like you just keep going. And so that's how I tend to think about it. And it's kind of where my basketball background helped me out quite a bit.
Nice.
What about, so like when you're working with your guys at LIU, like are there specific exercises you do, or is it just, in pregame warmups? Are we talking about consistency and kind of preaching home those concepts that you just mentioned, or what do you do there?
I take a really, really micro approach to it, and it kind of develops. It's kind of based on those drills that I do with them when I do have my time, like my 10 minutes in practice to work with them. If you can string together as many little victories as you possibly can,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to end up having a better chance of having a bigger victory at the end of the day. So like the example that I used for that drill where our guys are sitting on their knees and they're going as short and sharp as they possibly can to their off-stick hip.
Mm-hmm.
If they can execute that skill over and over again over a certain period of time, they're going to end up putting themselves in the best chance to potentially be successful. So there's a lot of external factors, especially in lacrosse, with there being 11 guys on each team, 10 guys in each team out on the field. And there's a lot of variables that you really can't control. If you can control all of your small controllables in the best possible way, you're going to end up getting yourself, I think, the best chance to win. So like in terms of things that I tell our guys, I really harp back on those little things that we do on a daily basis. And I mean, even if it's just creating a routine that you can fall back on. And for like our starting goalie, and one of the things that I did with him throughout the year, and it's because I think that it really helped his mental game. After every practice, he would just throw me 10 outlet routes. Or I'd basically start by the crease. I'd run like a football route, and he'd just hit me over the shoulder. You do that every day for 100 practices, you start to feel really good about the routine that you have and the routine that you've built, and that the work that you've been doing will kind of get that seal and that stamp of approval at the end of the day. Like, all right, I hit my 10 outlet routes, or I hit my 20 outlets. I had a good day. You know, you can put that mental stamp on it. So I think that's another thing that has a secondary kind of effect on that mental side of things. But definitely something that I think has helped a ton.
Yeah. When you went through a slump, or when you saw, like, you know, one of your guys going through a slump, what's your approach to getting out of that?
I think falling back on your routine. I was a little OCD when it came to the things that I did pregame, and it's probably a little bit to a fault. I probably shouldn't have been as neurotic as I was when I played. In terms of slumps, I would change the order of the shoes that I would tie first. I'd go right shoe then left shoe, or left shoe then right shoe. Like, I was that crazy, and I don't suggest that to anybody. That's not a good thing. That's way too much in your own head. But I think in terms of slump busting, you really need to kind of get back to those little things, and then also trying to find those mechanisms, those tools in your toolbox that I was talking about in the beginning, where if you can generate something positive, and it might be a shooter that always hits a specific shot in practice. Like for me, it was, I don't know if you remember Mike Sawyer, who's a Charlotte, North Carolina native. He had the fastest shot competition in MLL locked up for a while. He beat Rabels 111 times. He shot 116 miles an hour. I don't even remember the year, maybe 2015, 2014. And he, his porch where he used to shoot from all the time was about 8 yards wide and about 6 yards above GLE. So he'd catch the ball and shoot it underhand as hard as he could at the net. And he'd score on me all the time. And probably my own fault, the fault of my own. Like, I probably was ducking or trying not to get hit every once in a while, but because he shot it that hard, mentally you can't teach yourself to go after him every single time. But when I get scored on a whole lot by him, I'd actually try and force myself to challenge him shooting by stepping out at him every once in a while. And then after doing that a couple times, I would pull myself way back, like all the way almost behind the post, behind my ball side post, to give myself that reaction time. So like, if you can develop that awareness, like, all right, I'm going to make it really hard on myself to make this save 4 times in a row, because I know he's going to catch that ball there. He's going to shoot it. And then that 5th time, pull yourself way back and give yourself a completely different look by stepping back in the cage. You give yourself more time to actually see the ball coming towards you. More often than not, you're going to give yourself the opportunity to potentially see that ball a little bit better than you would. And that's the way that I kind of thought of slumps. Like, don't let yourself exist. Try something different. Like, try to use one of those tools. Don't just sit in the hot tub and let yourself steam to death. Like go change something. Change a little bit. Try something that Kyle Bernlor does really well. Try standing like Blaze. Try playing like Dylan Ward. You watch any of the Canadian national games. Like, try something different, and then go back to the way that you feel comfortable playing, because it might give you a new perspective, and it might give you a new outlook on kind of the way that you play and what you could change or what is really good about your game. And it'll just kind of reinforce that confidence in yourself that the way that you do play is the right way. Or maybe I should change something just a little bit. Maybe I should step back into my arc a little bit lower. And it might completely change your slump. And I think it's kind of consistent too with like hitters in baseball. Like, you hear about a guy who's going through a hitting slump, and they change one little thing about like the waggle that they have standing at home plate, and it gives them a new perspective. Same thing in golf. Like golfer's going to have difficulties every single time he goes out if he's not willing to adjust or change or something like that. Like, change the way you hold your hands, or the way that you approach the ball before you step up to hit it. Things like that. Like, you have to be willing and comfortable with changing something, or else it's just going to be a slump for the rest of your days playing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I love that comparison to baseball. I'm a Giants fan, and I remember reading this article about Brandon Crawford, and he was going through a slump, right? And then some of his teammates said, hey, it looks like you're in your stance, your hands are like a little bit lower than we've recognized them being, right? And he didn't even notice. And I think that same thing can happen to lacrosse goalies, where like it's such a thing of repetition, and like maybe you're off your arc a little bit, your stance is a little bit, or when the shot is coming, like your hands are dipping a little bit more than normal, and you might not even recognize that. And I think that's why, taping yourself and like reviewing and studying film is so valuable, because you can get back to where you were and get out of the slump that way. But I also love your point about just experimenting with different things, even if the end result of that is like, you know what, the way I was playing before, that's the right way for me.
Absolutely. If I didn't do that, I probably wouldn't have been the goalie that I was. I truly think that, because if you're not willing to change or to try something different, then you're not going to improve as fast. Awesome.
So you had a pretty intricate pregame routine, huh? Can we talk about that? What was the?
It was gross at times. I had this place. Shout out Roland Park Bagel over in Baltimore, right next to Loyola University. I always used to get this one sandwich. I got a chicken salad sandwich pregame. And I, for some reason, I always got it with bacon and cheddar, and chicken salad and cheddar cheese doesn't sound like it's all that appetizing, but for whatever reason, it's what I did. I did that with a red Gatorade, and then I listened to like the same music going up, I think every year. Sometimes I would change it year to year, but most of the time it was the same music, and put my cleats on a certain way, put my socks on a certain way. And I had to touch my pipes in a certain way. And I honestly couldn't give you the exact specifics now, because it's been so long since I've done it. But it was gross. It was too much.
There is something to be said though about having like a routine and like sticking to that routine. Cause I think, there's so much going through your head as a goalie, like let's just stick to this one routine. And at least then we know, we know what we're getting into. We know kind of where our thoughts need to be. And maybe it doesn't need to be like you said, left shoe goes on first, right shoe goes on second, then this, then that, like that level of detail. But certainly like, all right, pregame meal, arrive the field 2 hours early, do half hour of this, half hour of that. I think is a good routine.
I always got my wall ball in. I always got my jump rope in. I did some of that, the two ball hand-eye coordination stuff off the wall that I did with my dad and things like that. Like I incorporated the little bits and pieces of kind of the drill bank of the things that I like to do and just try to hit as much of it as I could consistently.
Yeah. Are you a big jump rope guy? I love jump rope.
I used to be. I don't preach it very much now as a coach, and I don't know why. I think that that's just really been something that guys that I've had the privilege of coaching have done on their own. So I really haven't had to hammer it home or use it as something that you should be doing. But
yeah.
I definitely see its value, and I definitely appreciate the purpose that it would serve for goalies.
Yeah, awesome. I'm a big jump rope guy, but
yeah, it's a good workout.
It's great. Workout. Yeah, it's great. I wrestled in high school, so like I did a lot of jump roping when I was a wrestler, and then just kind of carried that over to being a goalie.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, this has been so much fun, Jack. I mean, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and, sharing your knowledge and kind of how you approach the game. Just tons of really insightful stuff there. And I love it. If people want to, contact you or learn more about you, where should they go?
Probably my Instagram, Jack Runkel 24 would be, if somebody wanted to contact me and say, what's up, hit me up in my DMs. That's cool with me. I don't put a lot of goalie stuff out there. It's probably my own fault. I haven't really done that as much, but yeah, happy to talk goalie with anybody who wants to. My Instagram is Jack Runkel 24. So
cool. I'll link that up when this show comes out. And if you're going to leave those goalies out there with one last piece of advice, what would that be?
I got to plug a book that I love. Right. It's called The Power Within: Discovering the Path to Elite Goaltending, and I'll send you the link so you can post it there as well. Okay. But it talks about the mental side of things, and it talks about it from a hockey goalie's perspective, but it gives a lot of really great insights into kind of developing consistency and playing kind of at a really high level mentally, kind of almost becoming a goalie assassin, if you will, in terms of thinking about the game and playing the game in a certain way. So The Power Within.
I've read that book. It's fantastic. Yeah. Like, and in fact, like if you replace the words ice and puck with field and ball, there's no difference.
Same thing.
No difference.
Same thing.
Exact same thing. Yeah. So it's awesome. Jack, thank you so much. This has been a blast.
Thanks, Damon. Appreciate it.
All right, bud. Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, dude. That was great. That was real fun.
Yeah. Appreciate it, man.